everyone, Mike the Warhost here, and today we're continuing our look into the new Mythos factions and added in the 2.0 update with the Nautilus privateers. The spoiled daughter of a crown nobleman turned privateer and collector of antiquities, Rani Nimue plies the waves in a prototype submarine stolen from the crown with a ragtag crew of pirates, researchers, and the occasional crown representative in a never-ending quest for riches, glory, and hidden artifacts that just might help humanity survive the Shadow War. If you want to learn more about the lore of the Nautilus privateers, you can find a brief overview currently available in the back of the new Mythos rulebook. A link will be provided in the description below. The Nautilus privateers box contains the following models, adding up to 78 points. Rani Nimue, Sardar Hardit Singh, Charlotte Anning, Nico May, Violet Smee, and Erasmus Darwin. A drum of the Nautilus is also included in the faction, though he will need to be purchased separately. Rani Nimue is your faction leader and will get an additional action point when activating. She comes with a relic blade that can apply fatigue, as well as a rotary harpet that can apply bleed, though it only has a 10-inch range. Open fire lets her ignore cover when attacking with the rotary harpet for a single myth point. And for the Nautilus, lets you spend 2 myth points to remove 2 madness from all friendly models within 10 inches, though it can only be used once per game. Daring Do gives you an additional action point when rolling a critical success, and Going for Gold gives Rani a +1 bonus to all tests, attack, and defense rolls when within 3 inches of an objective. All in all, Rani is a solid leader and a great choice for frontline assaults. A lot of that goes away when she flips to Altered, however. The combat values on her weapons flip, so she's a bit better at melee than at shooting. Everything except open fire goes away, and the only ability she has left is compulsive gambling. This lets Rani re-roll any failed tests or attacks, but if she fails a second time, she gains paralyzed. Sardar Hardit Singh is Rani's bodyguard and serves his purpose rather well on the table. He comes with a Bayako that can apply paralyzed, as well as the same rotary harpet that Rani has, though with a lower combat value. Conditioned Against Pain gives Sardar the ability to reduce incoming wounds by 1 for a single myth point. Master Chowdakar lets Sardar become the target of any ranged attack targeting Rani if he's within 3 inches of her. And Dying Breath lets him make a free attack when he's reduced to 0 wounds. An important note is that Master Chowdakar does not come into effect when Rani is targeted by arcane attacks. Flipping to Altered doesn't really take much away from Sardar. He loses his current abilities and gains Overprotective, forcing him to make a sanity check at the start of every activation and move as close to Rani as possible if failed. He also gains from Hell's Heart, which functions identically to Dying Breath, aside from granting 3d6 for the final attack roll. Charlotte Anning is your primary source of arcane attacks in this faction, and potentially your fastest unit. She comes with a knife that can apply bleed, as well as a magic lantern with a 15-inch range that can apply burn. Translocation lets her spend a myth point to move 2d6 inches in any direction without triggering a disengaging strike. Hexagrammic Text let her re-roll a single die for any arcane attack to make sure it sticks, and Glyph of the All-Shard gives the entire force an additional myth point whenever Charlotte gets a critical success. Flipping to Alter can really end up messing with your plans for her if you're not careful. Her arcane defense drops by a point, and her sanity drops by a whopping 5 down to 2. Forbidden Knowledge lets you spend a myth point to gain the ability to roll 3d6 when making an arcane attack and only use the 2 highest dice. Arcane Addiction inflicts a wound on Charlotte at the end of her activation if she doesn't make an arcane attack. The big problem, though, is Dimensional Dislocation. This forces Charlotte to make a sanity test at the start of her activation. If she passes, great, nothing happens. If she fails, though, she immediately moves 1d6 in any direction chosen by your opponent. While 1d6 doesn't sound like a great distance, it can end up causing bigger problems for you if she's near an objective, for example. And don't forget her drastically lowered sanity value, making failed tests that much more likely. Nico May is a close combat master and can be difficult to land a blow on. She comes with a whip with a 3-inch range and the ability to apply fatigue, as well as claws that can blind opponents. Sprint gives her a +2 move and charge bonus at the cost of a single myth point, and Acrobatic lets her ignore difficult terrain obstacles up to 2 inches in height and gives her the opportunity to re-roll combat attack tests after charging, so long as a jump is included. This also lets her make a combat defense test to avoid taking any falling damage. Undercover makes Nico targetable if she's within 8 inches only, and Prehensile Tail lets her make any interact actions for free, as well as up to a range of 2 inches away rather than being in base contact. Flipping to Altered, however, reduces her combat effectiveness a great deal. Her charge range is reduced to 0, making her unable to charge at all. Her defense value also decreases by 1 when altered. Acrobatic and prehensile tail stay, though sprint and undercover are replaced with escape and cornered animal. Escape lets her spend a myth point to ignore disengaging strikes, and cornered animal gives her a +2 to all combat actions at the cost of losing the ability to charge or end up engaged with an enemy. You really want to pay attention to Nico throughout the game, as her madness threshold is only 2, so it can be very easy to render her nearly ineffective. Violet's Knee is one of your long-range units with a good number of support options as well. Her Webley Mucklock has a 15-inch range and can apply bleed, and a saber for up-close and personal work that can also apply the same effect. Give Orders lets her spend a myth point to grant vigor to a nearby unit, and Reassuring Presence gives friendly models within 12 inches a +1 bonus to their sanity when making tests. Firing Drill lets her make an aimed shot for only a single action point instead of 2, and Disciplined lets her reroll 1 sanity test during her activation. Flipping to Altered makes her a serious liability though. Her combat defense drops by 1, she becomes a bit better at using her saber, and all of her nice support abilities disappear. Runaway gives nearby models a -1 penalty to their sanity tests, and Strength in Numbers gives her a -1 to all tests when she's more than 5 inches away from another model. So when Violet flips, you have a choice. Isolate her to avoid spreading her sanity debuff, or keep her close by to make her less ineffective. A difficult choice, especially if Charlotte is nearby. Erasmus Darwin is another support unit that buffs his comrades and becomes a problem when he's seen too much. He comes with Galvanic Discharge, which has a 10-inch range and can apply Paralyzed, as well as a Servo Claw that can apply Fatigue. Threat Analysis lets Erasmus spend a myth point to give friendly units a +2 bonus to attacks to any single enemy unit within line of sight. Field Medic lets him heal either himself or a friendly model within 4 inches, and Arcane Warding reduces incoming damage from arcane attacks by 1. His altered side, though, can cause some problems. He gets a big boost to his combat defense, as well as a big nerf to range defense. All his abilities are wiped away by the flip, and he becomes a problem waiting to happen. Chain Reaction lets Erasmus make a second Galvanic Discharge attack for free at a model within 4 inches of the first target for a single myth point. This can be useful in breaking up any clumps of enemy units nearby, though it's not as nice as Threat Analysis. The big issue comes with Short Circuit. At the start of his activation, Erasmus must make a sanity check. If he passes, great. If not, then his first action must be a Galvanic Discharge attack against a random model in range, friendly or not. Fortunately, his sanity value stays at 8, so he stands a good chance at not zapping his friends, but the possibility is there, especially if Violet is nearby. And rounding out our faction roster today is Drum, the Soulless Automaton. He comes with a hammer hand that can apply fatigue, as well as a rotary harpoon gun with a 15-inch range and the potential to paralyze opponents. Servo Claw Crush lets him spend an additional action point to increase the number of wounds caused by a combat attack by 4, and Harpoon Drag lets you spend an action point to move a target wounded by a ranged attack towards Drum by 8 inches. If his target hits another model, obstacle, or impassable ground, or impassable terrain, it stops right there. Steel Hide reduces incoming damage by 1, and Legendary Automata makes him immune to bleed and paralyzed, as well as causing fear. Galvanic Apathy restricts him from using Mythos, gaining Madness, or interacting with an objective at all. Machine Spirit randomizes the number of action points he has available to him at the start of his activation. And lastly, Damage Control Protocol determines when he flips to Altered, doing so when he takes 10 wounds. Flipping to Altered turns Drum into a Wrecking Ball at the cost of his stronger abilities. His combat defense drops by 2, and a good number of his offensive abilities disappear. Steel Hide, Legendary Automata, Galvanic Apathy, and Machine Spirit all stay behind. In place of Servo Claw Crush and Harpoon Drag, Drum gets Mechanical Menace, which lets you make a second combat attack for free against a different opponent if you cause at least 1 wound against the first. The key to succeeding with the Nautilus Privateers is timing your use of For the Nautilus properly, as letting too many of your units go around Altered can cause a great deal of problems. Try to keep Violet, Charlotte, and Nico within 10 inches of Rani when they're approaching their madness threshold, and do your best to rescue them from insanity before they cause too many problems for you. I recommend against using Charlotte for any objective holding duties, as dimensional dislocation will make her a very poor builder. Well, that's going to do it for me today. Stay tuned for more Wild West Exodus, Mythos, Fog and Friction, and Dystopian Wars content in the near future, as well as some looks at Lost World Exodus in the not so near future. Maybe. At some point. Please? Alright, take care everyone.